This is our mock homicide crime scene processing presentation with Kelsey, Graciana, Larissa, and Carrie. Our officer notes, which was provided to us at the scene and based off what we did see at the scene, at around 8 o'clock in the morning, 2 gunshots were heard and 911 was called. When the officers arrived at the scene, the victim, Tara Jackson, was found with 3 bullet wounds, one in the arm, side of the abdomen, and the front of the abdomen. She was transported to the hospital. There was no suspect found or at the scene when the officers had arrived. We arrived at the scene at 9:50 a.m.
The crime scene was located at Grand Canyon University in the courtyard of a apartment building. It was a small outdoor area. Upon arrival, there was no visual disturbances that we could see. The weather was 75 degrees, sunny, and there was wind.
For our photographs overall, we took 51 photos throughout the scene. And for our overall photographs, we chose the ones that gave the best representation of our noticeable evidence items. So for the first overall photograph, we have the soil disturbance that was noted at the scene, along with the white shoe, the firearm, the white cloth fiber, as well as the shoe print and the hair clump that was also found at the scene. And the second overall photo included the shoe print, the hair clump, the white shoe, and the firearm, along with the cloth fiber. And the very last picture included the 2 spent bullet casings that we had noted at the scene, along with the cloth fiber, and as well as the hair clump and the shoe print that was found at the scene. So for the next set of overall photographs, first one on this slide was of the shoe print and plastic fiber, along with the hair clump and the cloth fiber. The second overall photograph on this slide included the 2 spent bullet casings, the cloth t-shirt fiber, along with the soil disturbance. And the very, very last overall photograph on this slide had a very good representation of the evidence items in their entirety.
For the evidence search, we used the strip method. Before searching, we did notice large pieces of evidence items like the 2 spent bullet casings, the white shoe, and a handgun. We performed the strip method. We all lined up and moved through the scene going north to south. As smaller evidence items were found, we noted the time that they were found, the location, what they were, and we placed a marker next to them. As you can see, we found 9 pieces of evidence. However, 10 and 11 are the magazine and the live round found inside the gun.
The measurement method that was used for this mock homicide scene was the rectangular coordinates method. The rectangular coordinates method fixes each evidence item at a right angle to each other. It measures the walls of the scene, and the items that were measured were along the same baselines coming from the north and the east wall for the measurements. Here you can see all of the measurements for each piece of evidence.
For the mid-range photographs, for the first one, we showed the spatial relationship between the shoe print that had been found at the scene, along with the clump of hair. And then we showed the spatial relationship between the firearm and the white shoe, along with the spatial relationship of the soil disturbance that we had noted at the scene, with the tree that was found in the southwest area of the scene, along with the 2 spent bullet casings towards the northwest area of the scene.
And right here we have our rough sketch for the mock homicide scene. The rough sketch was done not to scale and in pencil right at the scene. It also contains all of the measurements on top of the sketch itself, a key, and non-evidence items. The next slide we have is our final sketch. The final sketch was done in pen. It is also not done to scale. And there's a chart below that contains all of the measurements to help make sure that it's easy to see the relationship of where the evidence was for the crime scene. And the chart will have the key as well as the measurements from the east and the north wall and our compass.
Here is a computerized final sketch of our scene.
And then for our close-up photographs, we took pictures of each evidence item. Like, both pictures did have a measurement scale along with it. And so for the first one that you see there, it was the shoe print. And then the second one, we also did altered versions of the separate evidence items. So for instance, the first shoe print was measured vertically, and then the second time it was measured horizontally. And we did the same thing for all items of evidence, including the clump of hair that was found, the plastic fiber, along with the 2 spent bullet casings. And then on the next slide, we also did take close-up photographs of the soil disturbance, along with the live round that was found inside the firearm, along with the white shoe that was found. And then we also did one for the white cloth fiber, and then we also did a close-up of the magazine that was found in the gun, along with a close-up picture of the gun itself.
For the evidence collection, the materials that we used were tweezers, small evidence packages, large evidence packages, paper bindles, and plaster of Paris. The paper bindles were used for our small trace evidence, which was the plastic fiber, the hair and the dirt clump, soil disturbance, and the white fabric that was found. They were all placed in paper bindles and then placed in larger envelopes. The plaster of Paris was used to take a casting of the shoe print that was left in the dirt.
For our 2 possible scenarios that we decided to come up with was, the first one was a struggle scenario, so a basic struggle between the suspect and the victim, which involved the gun. So we believe that the victim and the suspect somehow ended up struggling with the gun, trying to basically not have one shoot the other person, and that is what led to the bullet wounds in our victim, along with some hair fibers being found on the floor, also 2 bullet casings, and then the gun and the shoe all being at the scene.
The second scenario that we theorized was that our crime scene was actually a secondary location, as we only found 2 spent bullet casings, and the victim was shot 3 times. We theorized that the victim was shot somewhere else, leaving that first casing there, and then the victim was running north to south through our scene and collapsed, also shot twice there, and that's why we have 2 bullet casings with 3 wounds.
We were able to go back and reprocess the scene. Some of the things that we would do differently would be definitely in terms of our organizational skills, just because when we first arrived on scene, it felt like we felt a bit rushed, and instead of taking, time to really plan it out, we kind of felt that we just had to get in and process the scene, as fast as we could. And I think in that sense, this is where our note-taking skills kind of slacked a little bit.
For the second question, it's one of the big mistakes I feel that I made while doing those measurements was trying to get the measuring tape to not sag or twist or just moving in general. The measuring tape was kind of flimsy, so it was harder to get it straight and completely flat in a sense of having it be sturdy. So this kind of made our measurements not as accurate as we would like them to be or as they should be.
And so if we could go back and do it differently, I would say the measurements was a huge part of the mistakes that were made, as well as personally making my notes make a little bit more sense, having a little bit more cohesion, since if someone was reading it, it wouldn't make sense to them, but it would to me. Just making my notes a little bit more conclusive and clear.
One of the mistakes that was made was that I did not note the evidence collection time in my personal notes. However, it was noted on the package and the COC form. However, I did not put it in my notes as we were running out of time, and I did feel very stressed, and it was just one thing that I forgot.